Welcome back to another lighting breakdown. Today we are looking at My Blue Jeans, which was a spec project because we were shooting at VIVA Studios, which is in Etobicoke. They have tons of lights available, so we were able to just play around and see what lighting configuration actually worked for us. We wanted to shoot this spec project simply because I was setting up the Ronin 2, so I was trying to balance it. I was trying to see if I could match my easy rigs, all of 5 that didn't actually work, to try to operate the Ronin handheld. If you want to find out how that went, there is a video linked here.
Bruh, like I can't operate like this, but I look like a goofball.
I told my friend Kyle that I was building this camera rig, and he was like, well, you might as well shoot something with it. We came up with this idea 3 days prior, and I had a very strong reference video that I wanted to see if I could replicate their lighting. As a cinematographer, lighting is obviously one of the first priorities that you look at aside from camera movement, and I really wanted to make sure I could master lighting for a backdrop. At VIVA, they have a huge white cyclorama. The goal is when you are lighting a backdrop, a simple plain backdrop, just like a cyc, you want to be lighting for the backdrop and for the talent separately. What I see often, what I wanted to avoid, was seeing harsh shadows on the cyc. In the last couple months, something really clicked in my head, and when I was looking at reference images and reference videos, I had always tried to look at where the light is hitting in order to determine where the lights actually are. Sometimes this is really difficult because depending on how ambient the light actually is, we don't really know where the initial light source is. Recently, I have kind of wired in my head the opposite of when you're looking at reference images, look at the shadows first. Naturally, if you are shining a light on something, it's going to cast a shadow in that opposite direction. So if you're thinking shadows first, you're looking at where is the light actually hitting the object in order to create that shadow. So in my brain, I'm kind of working backwards. Instead of looking at the light parts of the image, I'm looking at where the shadows are in order to determine what angle those lights are pointing. I recently posted a TikTok about this as well because I was lighting a backdrop for an e-commerce brand, and in order to avoid shadows on the backdrop, you have to think, okay, where are these shadows actually going to be? Because you have to have a shadow if you have a light source. When we were looking at the reference images, it looked like the shadow of the talent was on the floor, which means the opposite of the floor is the ceiling. The only way I could do this was to bounce light from our white ceiling, thank God it was white, and have this white ceiling bounce all of the light from top down, and it was very soft that way. So it's just food for thought the next time that you do end up looking at a reference image, look at the shadows first, and that will really help you determine where exactly the light source is. Because most of the time the light source is completely hidden from the image, but the shadows are very obvious usually, so it's a good frame of reference. I'm gonna jump right into this breakdown. We had a lighting setup for our wides, and then we had a lighting setup for our close-ups, and the only difference was moving one light. I'm gonna start with one of our group shots. These are lovely models from Toronto. You have Sydney, you have Dyuti, and you have Lauren if you want to hire them. Their credits are also in the description. Because we only have one true location for this spec, I want to talk in depth about how to light for a backdrop. Luckily for us, VIVA has a overtop grid, so there's just a bunch of pipe on the ceiling, and you have lights that are already fixed to this grid. They have 4 Aperture 300 Novas. These are also RGB. If you can imagine, on the ceiling, there's a grid that looks like this. There's a light in the back corner, there's 2 on the side, and then 1 front center. The lights that we ended up turning on was the back and the front, and we left those out of the picture. So the back Nova, which has a space light on it, which is basically this cylindrical diffusion, we have that lighting up the backdrop here. Then this front Nova lighting this kind of area. You can even see on their face there's a shadow side here. So that tells us where is the light going to be. There's going to be one more light that is keying them from the side here. And this had a giant softbox. I believe it was an Aperture 600. That is essentially 45 degrees. Keeping that frame of mind, if you were to look at this image and think, okay, where are their light sources? You can see that there are shadows being cast here as well. So that tells you that the light source is coming this way. And because their shadows are quite short, that means that the light source is high. If for whatever reason we had the light very low or almost at eye level to them, their shadows would become a lot longer because we're closer to the subject, and the way that physics works, that's just how it would end up being. A lot of this shadow that you see on the edges here, that's all pretty much done in post with vignetting. That was done by Jordan at the Vanity. She's my go-to colorist. I would also recommend hiring her if you have paid work. Even in camera, you had some fall off here because we didn't have these two side lights on, and we really just wanted to make sure that the talent was all nice and bright and the backdrop was bright. Another thing to know, all of these lights were set at the same Kelvin. I have no idea what temperature, probably, I'm gonna say around 4,000. If you're finding this video insightful or helpful in any way, I would truly appreciate if you click the subscribe button. Okay, back to the video. Moving on to the next still, this is Lauren. This is her close-up, and the only change again that we did was move that softbox light in a little bit closer. Again, if you're looking at this image, you're gonna think, okay, where are the shadows? The shadows are all here, they're all here. So that must mean that there is a light source coming from this way. If I was to look at this image without knowing how I was lighting this, maybe with more years of experience, I'd be able to tell. But I also can see that on her shoulder, it's a lot hotter than the rest of her arm. So I'm probably going to also estimate that there is a light coming from top down as well, because you also have this going on in her hair. The background is obviously lit as well. So she was essentially standing under that first nova. If you have them like in that tic-tac-toe formation, she's standing under this one, and this is again lighting the backdrop, and the side ones are not being used. The one thing I would like to do differently for next time is to have an eye light, and we lose that here. With all of this soft light, it would be really nice to just throw either like an MC with a little dome on the actual camera, and that way you have like a little sparkle in their eye, and a lot of DPs do this because it just humanizes your subject. We're zooming through here, again, because this was just one location and different posing and different models. This lighting breakdown is probably going to be a lot shorter than the Bumble one. I want to just take different stills, even though they're the same location, just to show you guys how the light is working in different scenarios. Again, all of this side corner here, there isn't a lot of light, but that is also accentuated in post with some vignetting. We, again, haven't changed the setup at all. You have the one Nova that's shining on the backdrop, and then you have the one Nova at the front shining down on her, top down. Again, looking at this image, where are the shadows? The shadows are all here. Even this harsh shadow where the jeans are, there you can see a shadow here, all this shadow where her leg is blocking, and on her face as well. So you can tell that the light source is top down just from looking at that. If it wasn't, you would be seeing shadows all over the floor here. And then our other key, again, softbox pointing 45 degrees at her. Here we can kind of see an eye light, and that is again coming from the softbox. This is a wide, so it'd probably be a little bit hard to have the aperture with the dome on the camera and create that eye light just because she's so far away. But that's pretty much it. That's it. It might seem kind of simple when you break it down, but for some reason now when I'm looking at images, I'm really just looking at where the shadows are to determine where the light source is. The last shot I'm going to talk about is a group shot. You have vignetting on the sides here. This is all relatively done in post. In camera, you can kind of see it. This backdrop here behind them is all lit again with the Nova, and then they are standing in the second Nova that's closer to the camera. We do also have the softbox again pointing this way, and you can see where the shadows are in all of their faces. I'll go with Sydney first. You can see all of this shadow below her chin. You can see this in Lauren as well, and that tells you that there is a top-down soft source. I think once we brought in that softbox a little bit closer, you can catch the eye light all here. Sid's wearing glasses, so it's a little harder to tell, but there is eye light, which is ideal to kind of humanize everybody. Some of these shadows are also coming from this source here, so you can kind of tell the shadows from Lauren's hair. You can really tell on Sid's jean jacket here, this is all shadow, all dark. Very lightly, you can tell on her shoulder here. We had the softbox on the right side, and our talent Chad with darker skin, he was also on the right side, and we did that purposefully so that he could still be lit in the same amount of strength as the other women because they have lighter skin. If you're framing for a group shot like this and Chad was on the left side, maybe he wouldn't have this direct soft light on his arms. I probably still would have increased some light on him if I were to do this again. If you guys haven't seen the full version of the spec, you can go watch it here. Thank you to everyone who made this spec possible. Shout out to VIVA. They have a studio and rentals that we used here, so that was super helpful. Everyone's credits are below and links to book this studio as well. If you found this video insightful or helpful at all, please let me know in the comments below and consider subscribing because I will be posting videos every single week. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.